The boardroom at Monroe Holdings was a war zone of murmurs, clattering coffee cups, and tightening neckties. Wall-to-wall glass framed the Manhattan skyline, but inside, the view was pure chaos. Phones buzzed, legal pads trembled, and in the center of it all, a man collapsed. The interpreter, slender, sweating, only moments ago poised, crumpled outside the conference room like a puppet cut from its strings. Stroke, someone whispered. Paramedics were on the way, but the delegation from Dubai had already arrived. And without an interpreter, the $30 million deal, the one that would save Monroe Holdings from default, was on the verge of collapse. Victor Langston, billionaire CEO and corporate lion, in a tailored gray suit, stood slowly from his chair. His jaw was clenched so tight you could hear his molars grind. Get that girl out! All heads turned. A small figure had entered the boardroom unnoticed, a girl no older than 10, brown skin glowing under the halogen lights, standing just inside the double doors. Her hoodie was faded, her sneakers scuffed, but her eyes? Alert, burning. "I can help," she said, loud and clear. Silence swallowed the room. "Who let her in here?" barked Mr. Denner, the company's head of legal affairs. 2 security guards moved instantly, reaching for her arms. "No!" she shouted, jerking away. "I speak Arabic and French. Please, if you don't let me help, this company will fall. I can stop that." Someone gasped. A woman dropped her pen. Victor waved the guards off for a moment. "And who exactly are you?" The girl stepped forward, trembling but defiant. "My name is Nia Monroe. I'm 10. I live in Queens. My mom teaches languages. My dad was a janitor in this building before he got laid off. I've been coming here with him for years." Listening, Victor narrowed his eyes. "So you've been eavesdropping?" "No, I've been learning." Whispers erupted again. Executives turned to one another, unsure whether to laugh or call security. But before anyone could move again, the door burst open. "Nia!" A woman stood breathless, eyes wild. Nia's mother, Lionel Monroe. Her schoolteacher's blouse was wrinkled, a lanyard still around her neck. "She's just a child." Victor raised a hand. Everyone stopped talking. The room froze. He studied Nia for a long beat, gaze unreadable. Then, "We're out of time. We gamble once." "Sir," Denner started. "She's not wrong." Victor cut him off. "We have no other option. If she fails, we lose everything anyway." The guards released her arms. Nia took a breath, so deep it shook her shoulders. She turned toward the door just as a delegation entered. 6 sharply dressed executives from Dubai, including one woman in a Navy hijab and a man with a gold-tipped cane. Their eyes flicked across the room before resting on Nia, brows lifting. One of them whispered in Arabic, "She's a child." Nia met his gaze. "I may be a child," she replied fluently, "but I'm also your only translator today." They blinked in surprise. One man smiled faintly. Victor, from his seat, leaned back with a quiet, "Begin." Sophia Monroe, the company's interim COO, handed Nia a printed summary of the contract. Her hand trembled as she brushed the girl's fingers. "Just do your best." Nia nodded. Then she spoke. The Dubai lead, Mr. Al-Murad, began quickly, his Arabic fast and technical. Nia's response was immediate and measured. She translated with care, inflection, and control. When he joked about New York's frigid spring, she passed it along with the same dry tone. Executives chuckled. Someone whispered, "She's better than the last 3 we hired." Victor didn't smile, but his posture eased. Then the negotiation shifted. Al-Murad raised the issue of liability clauses, a clause buried deep in the contract, masked with legal nuance. Nia faltered for the first time. A single word, Tasri. Her brain spun. She knew it, studied it. But here, the meaning was fractured. Permit, declaration, exemption. One wrong translation, and the clause could swing disastrously. The room noticed her pause. Denner tapped his pen. The Dubai team leaned forward. Then Nia did something no adult translator had done. She looked directly at Al-Murad. "Sir," She said in Arabic, "When you said TASRI, did you mean regulatory exemption or export clearance?" He blinked, impressed. "Regulatory exemption." "Thank you," she replied, then continued. Victor exhaled through his nose. Sophia squeezed her pen. The meeting went on for another hour. Nia translated both directions now. Monroe to Dubai, Dubai to Monroe. Fielding questions, correcting misread intentions, and intuiting emotions behind phrasing. When Monroe's CFO nervously brought up currency volatility, Nia leaned into Sophia and whispered, "They're nervous about timing. Add a late payment clause with a stability guarantee." The offer was amended. Al-Murad paused, then smiled. "In that case," he said, "we have a deal." Silence. Then applause, soft, stunned, sincere. Nia stepped back on the table, pale with exhaustion. Sophia knelt beside her. "You were brilliant. Can I sit down now?" Nia whispered. Sophia smiled and stood. "Gentlemen, I suggest we applaud." All 22 executives stood. Slowly, hesitantly, but they clapped. Victor clapped too, once, twice, then steadily. Then he said, "Someone get this girl a glass of water." And someone else call the press. Lionel ran forward, scooping Nia into her arms. "You scared me," she whispered. "I had to do it," Nia said, voice muffled in her mother's neck. No one else could. Victor approached them. "Miss Monroe," he said, "you just saved over 1,000 jobs. That's not just talent. That's leadership." Nia looked up. "My mom taught me to listen. My dad taught me to be brave." Victor nodded. "I'd like to meet both." Lionel stood taller. "You just did." But across the city, inside a dim office at a rival investment firm, a man in a slate blue suit lowered a tablet, pausing the replay of Nia's moment in the boardroom. "Get me Denner's assistant," he said coldly. "Now." He tapped the screen again and watched the 10-year-old girl smile. Let's see how long that smile lasts. The morning after the Dubai deal, the Monroe Holdings skyscraper stood tall against the Manhattan skyline, gleaming in the pale light. But inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The company had survived, but just barely. And the reason why I was sitting silently in a backroom lounge, sipping hot cocoa from a ceramic mug someone in HR insisted she deserved. Nia Monroe wore clean jeans and a fresh hoodie. A guest badge was clipped awkwardly to her collar. "Temporary clearance," guessed the CEO. She didn't ask for it. She didn't even understand why the man who printed it had typed it so quickly, his hands shaking slightly as he handed it over. Her mother, Lionel, sat beside her, shoulders tense. She hadn't stopped holding Nia's hand since they walked into the building 2 hours earlier. Inside the executive boardroom, chaos simmered beneath polished smiles and carefully measured voices. "She's 10, one board member whispered. "We can't offer her a job," said another. "But we also can't pretend she didn't just save us," muttered Sophia Monroe, still pale from the adrenaline of yesterday. Victor Langston, standing near the window with a tablet in one hand and an unlit cigar in the other, said nothing. His silence was not indecision. It was calculation. "We're one press conference away from being seen as exploiters," said Denner, the VP of Legal, voice thin. "You realize that, don't you?" Victor turned to face them. "You all heard her. She was calm, precise, smarter than most of us in the room." "Exactly," Denner said. "That's the problem." Victor snapped the cigar in half and tossed it into a trash bin. "No, the problem is that we almost fell apart because we were so busy being professional, we ignored the most competent person in the building." A long silence. "So, what do we do?" asked Sophia. Victor's voice softened just slightly. "We give her access, protection, opportunity. Not because she's a headline, because she's a symbol of what we missed." He looked up, "And I'm not going to miss it again." By that afternoon, arrangements had been made. A car pulled up outside the Monroe building. Nia blinked in surprise. It wasn't the same sleek black town car from yesterday. This one was older, subtler, a dusty gray sedan with a dent in the rear bumper. "Where are we going?" she asked Victor as he climbed in beside her. "Somewhere safer," he replied, "and smarter." The car wound through lower Manhattan, then turned onto a narrow street in Tribeca. It stopped in front of a modest red brick building with an iron plaque by the door, a Ninsley Foundation Private. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of leather and old paper. An older woman in a cream suit stood waiting. "Miss Monroe," she greeted with a warm but exact tone. "I'm Marion Green. Welcome." "Where are we?" Nia asked. "A place for voices like yours," Marion said. "Follow me." They walked through a hallway lined with black and white photographs. Children graduating, giving speeches, shaking hands with presidents. At the end of the corridor was a heavy oak door. Inside, a man stood slowly, leaning on a polished cane, tall, weathered, with sharp gray eyes and a scar that cut across his left brow. "Nia," Victor said, "meet Elliot Ninsley." "You're the Ninsley?" "I used to be," the man said, smiling faintly. "Now I just help others become something more." Nia nodded, uncertain. "Why am I here?" Elliot gestured to a large leather chair. She climbed in, feet dangling. "Because you did something extraordinary. And now they'll come for you." Lyanna tensed, but Victor gently rested a hand on her shoulder. Elliot continued. "People who profit from silence don't like being interrupted by the truth." He turned to a shelf, pulled down a thin black folder, and opened it. Inside were grainy photos. Nia and her mother leaving their apartment. Her father, James Monroe, in his old janitor uniform. Dates. Timestamps. "They're already watching," he said. "They want to spin what happened yesterday into something dangerous." "Why?" Nia whispered. "Because the system runs on control," Elliot said. "And your voice disrupted that." Marion knelt beside her. "That's why we're offering you protection, education, and training." "What kind of training?" "Observation, ethics, influence, defense," Marion said. "How to speak, how to think critically, how to survive." Elliot leaned forward. "We're not just saving you. You're helping us save others." Nia looked at her mother. Lyanna's eyes were filled with worry and pride. "Will it be hard?" Nia asked. "Yes," Marion said gently. "But the world already made it hard. You're just learning to walk through it with your eyes open." The next day, Nia returned to the Ninsley Foundation for her first session. She wore the same sneakers and the same hoodie, but her eyes looked sharper. In a small white-walled room, two people waited for her. "This is Oliver," Marion said, "former intelligence analyst, and Grace, behavioral psychology." Grace had warm brown skin, thick glasses, and a calm voice. "We're the weirdos behind the curtain." Oliver smirked. "We're going to show you how the world really works." Nia sat at the center table. The room was lined with white-barred screens, maps, and legal pads. The first exercise was simple. Oliver played a video clip. A newscaster describing Nia's appearance in the boardroom. "Allegedly brilliant," the anchor said. "Possibly rehearsed." Speculation abounds. "See it?" Oliver asked. "See what?" "How they use allegedly 3 times before saying anything factual. It's not reporting. It's narrative seeding." Nia blinked. "They're trying to plant doubt." "Exactly." In the second session, Grace showed her photographs of politicians and executives. "Tell me who's lying." Nia stared. "They all are." "Good instinct," Grace said, chuckling. "Now tell me how you know." Nia noticed a shift in shoulders. The mouth ticks, the eye movements. "The truth doesn't hide in the words," she said slowly. "It hides in the gaps." Grace beamed. She's going to be scary good. That evening, Nia returned home with her head buzzing. She curled up on the couch, her notebook open, jotting down everything she'd seen, everything she'd felt. Her mother brought her tea and sat beside her. "Are you okay?" "I think so," Nia said softly. "But I don't think the hard part is over." Lyanna nodded. "It's not, but you're not alone." They sat in silence for a while. Then Nia whispered, "They're going to try to erase me." Lyanna touched her cheek. "Then we'll write you back in, line by line." The next morning, an anonymous email hit the inboxes of 2 major business blogs. Subject: Monroe Holdings violated protocols. Attached was a screenshot of Nia inside the boardroom. The image had been cropped, darkened, and captioned, "Exploitation or Desperation." A corporation puts a child on the front line. The sender? Anonymous. But inside the Monroe legal server, a trace was detected. The image had been uploaded from a company device. And the person logged in at the time? Victor Langston. The hallway outside the Aninslee Foundation's training room echoed with quiet tension. Nia Monroe walked slowly, her notebook pressed to her chest. It had only been a week since the boardroom incident, but she felt like she'd aged a year. Grace was waiting inside with a smile. "Morning, kiddo." Nia slid into her seat. "I didn't sleep." Grace nodded, unfazed. "You're adjusting to a world that doesn't want to be seen clearly. That's like shining a flashlight into a hornet's nest." Oliver entered next, tossing a USB drive onto the table. "This is today's exercise. Media framing. Real headlines about you. Let's break them down." Nia plugged the drive. Her face stared back from a dozen thumbnails. Headline screamed the child CO. Prodigy or PR stunt? Exploiting genius, Monroe's new crisis. Nia scanned them without flinching. "They're trying to find me before I do." "Exactly," Oliver said. "Control the label, control the story." "What do I do?" Grace stepped closer. "You learn to write your own narrative and then defend it." Elliot entered, leaning on his cane. His eyes were darker than usual. "We have company today." Nia looked up. "Who?" "Someone who used to work for the same machine that's targeting you." A man followed Elliot into the room. Black, early 40s, clean-shaven with careful eyes and a faded backpack slung over one shoulder. "My name is Andre Sims," he said. "I used to make people like you disappear." Nia sat up straighter. "Then why are you here?" Andre met her gaze. "Because I failed to protect someone like you once. I don't want to fail again." They relocated to the Foundation's observation room, lined with audio equipment, newspaper clippings, and screens showing real-time social media engagement. Andre pulled up a visual timeline. At the center, Nia Monroe. Around her, red strings stretched the headlines, corporate IPs, influencer names, anonymous emails. "You're the epicenter now," he explained. "They're testing which story sticks. Child genius, corporate puppet, exploited prodigy. Your truth broke the rhythm. Now they're trying to reset it." He zoomed into a file marked Alpha Reframe. "This is a confidential memo from one of Monroe's rival firms," Andre said. "Obtained through a whistleblower. They're calling it Narrative Realignment Protocol. Their goal, discredit your intervention as a violation of boardroom confidentiality." Nia's voice was steady. "But I didn't do anything wrong." Andre leaned in. "It doesn't matter. These people don't need facts. They just need doubt." On a second screen, he opened a voice recording. Male voice. Leak the classroom records. Find disciplinary marks. If she has perfect scores, leak that too. Perfection makes her suspicious. Nia shivered. "They're going to come after your mom next," Grace said softly. Nia looked at Elliot. "So, what do we do?" "We get ahead of them," he replied. "You're not the first person they've tried to erase. But you can be the first to turn the erasure into a spotlight." That afternoon, they began developing the Clarity Project, a coordinated response campaign aimed not at defending Nia, but at dismantling the system coming for her. "We won't just prove you told the truth," Oliver said. "We'll show how they try to bury it." The plan had 3 arms. 1. Podcast platform. Stories from other victims of narrative suppression. 2. Document repository. Leaked memos, whistleblower reports, and digital trails. 3. Media strategy. A video statement from Nia herself. At first, Nia hesitated. What if I say something wrong? What if they twist my words? Grace touched her hand. They'll twist them anyway. So say what matters. They recorded the video that night in the smallest room of the Foundation. Nia sat on a simple stool, hair pulled back, her hoodie zipped to her chin. No fancy lighting. No rehearsals. Just her voice. "My name is Nia Monroe. I'm 10 years old. I speak 7 languages. I helped during a business meeting because no one else could. She took a breath. Now, some people are trying to make that look wrong, but I'm not the problem. I'm the proof. The proof that girls, kids, people of color can do more than the system expects. And that scares some people. She paused again. But it shouldn't. It should inspire them. And then her final line. You can't erase me. You can only reveal yourselves. They uploaded it through 3 anonymous networks. It went viral in 17 minutes. By morning, 80,000 comments had poured in. Teachers reposted it. Journalists debated it. A senator tweeted, "Protect this child." But not everyone was clapping. Grace's laptop pinged with a fresh alert. "Oh," she muttered. "Here they come." The pushback campaign had begun. 3 anonymous Twitter accounts accused Nia's mother of falsifying credentials. A long dormant blog claimed Nia was part of a media grooming operation. On Reddit, a thread labeled "The Puppet Files" climbed to 10,000 upvotes in under an hour. Andre leaned against the wall. "They're scrambling, which means we're winning," Elliot added. Still, the tension gnawed at them. Later that night, Nia sat on the edge of her bed, flipping through old vocabulary notes. French conjugations, Arabic tenses, Swahili proverbs. She paused at a line her mother had once scribbled in the corner. Words are maps. Use them to find the truth. She thought about that line as she stared at the ceiling. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every kid who'd ever been underestimated and then punished for proving them wrong. At 11:43 p.m., Elliot received an encrypted message from an old contact inside Monroe Holdings. It was a transcript from a private boardroom conversation, dated 3 days before the Dubai deal. In it, Denner, the head of legal, warned Victor Langston, "If we go through with this and she succeeds, it won't be a miracle. It'll be a liability. She becomes the face of our negligence." Victor's reply, "Then we control the fall. Let her win. And if it spirals, we let her take the noise." Elliot froze. He leaned back in his chair, the shadows of the foundation folding around him. Victor hadn't protected Nia. He had weaponized her. The first press call came at 7:02 a.m., then the next one at 7:05. By 9 a.m., Nia Monroe's name had dominated national headlines. Her video statement, raw, poised, unfiltered, had reached 1.2 million views overnight. Schools were playing it in homerooms. Advocacy groups reposted it under hashtags like #LetHerSpeak and #UnmutedYouth. Her words were no longer a whisper. They were a movement. At the Ninsley Foundation, Elliot sat in the control room, scanning 3 screens at once. "They're watching," he said, "and waiting to strike back." Grace was already on her 3rd cup of coffee. They'll hit with something bigger this time. Not just smear. They'll reframe her as a threat. She already is. Oliver replied from the monitor room. To the system. Nia entered with a quiet calm, backpack slung over one shoulder. "What's next?" Elliot looked up, proud and cautious. "We launched the Clarity Project." The plan had grown over the last 72 hours. What started as a response to the smear campaign had become a full-fledged operation, a layered digital counter-network built to expose how narratives are manipulated, how truth is buried, and how silence is manufactured. At its core, a podcast, a document library, and a secure platform for whistleblowers. They called it Clarity. Nia would be the first voice, episode 1. Not an exception. Grace and Oliver would host. Elliot would oversee security. Andre would coordinate outreach to hidden allies across industries. "We don't just defend her story," Grace explained. "We defend the ecosystem of truth she disrupted." That night, they launched the teaser. Within 24 hours, Clarity had 300,000 subscribers. But the backlash was right on schedule. A respected business journal published an op-ed titled, "Exploiting Brilliance When Corporations Use Children for PR Wins." It was cold, calculated, and conveniently anonymous. Grace scrolled through it, frowning. They're reframing the entire Dubai negotiation, calling it a staged incident. Oliver tapped the metadata. The article was ghostwritten. The file's author tag reads, H. Denner, Nia's brow furrowed. That's Monroe's VP of Legal. Elliot leaned on his cane. He's not just undermining you. He's building plausible deniability. If this explodes, he plans to say you were a rogue variable. Nia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Let's tell the truth louder." Episode 1 dropped that Friday. It wasn't a biography. It wasn't sanitized. It was Nia's voice, clear and unscripted, telling the story behind the boardroom. A girl who'd been invisible until necessity made her visible. "I didn't want to be noticed," she said. "I wanted to be useful." Listeners cried. Teachers wept. Students wrote letters. One comment read, "She reminded me of my own daughter. May she never be silenced again." The second episode featured a former teacher from Michigan who had been fired after speaking out about racially biased textbooks. The third spotlighted a warehouse worker who documented unsafe labor practices until his footage vanished from internal archives. Every story connected. Every story shook the ground. Clarity climbed the charts. But not everyone applauded. It was just after midnight when Andre burst into the Foundation conference room, waving a flash drive. "We've been compromised." Grace looked up sharply. "What happened?" "This," he said, sliding the drive into the console. On screen, an email chain loaded. Confidential correspondence from Monroe Holdings' legal division. A single document attached. Subject line, "Fall strategy." Victor Langston's name was in the signature. Oliver Reed, aloud. "If narrative pressure continues, initiate distancing protocol. Frame intervention as unsanctioned. Leverage youth protection laws to suggest internal breach. Leverage media noise. Minimize brand damage." Nia's eyes widened. "They're saying I acted alone." Elliot didn't move. It was always a possibility. "But he supported me," Nia said softly. He clapped. He called the press. "He did," Elliot said, "until the risk outweighed the reward." The next morning, the headline struck, "Boardroom Child Now Legal Liability for Monroe Holdings. Was the Dubai deal ethical?" Internal leak. CEO Langston distances himself from youth interpreter. Victor Langston had made his move. A statement was released from Monroe's corporate offices. Carefully worded, legally buffered. "While we acknowledge the unexpected role played by a young guest during a recent negotiation, Monroe Holdings does not condone or promote the presence of minors in high-level corporate proceedings. The incident is under review." Nia read it twice, then deleted the email. She said nothing for hours, not until late afternoon, when she walked quietly into the podcast studio. "Turn it on," she said. Grace blinked. "Are you sure?" "Yes." They recorded in a single take. "I wasn't brought in to help," Nia said. "I stepped in because no one else could. And that decision saved your company." She looked into the camera. "I didn't ask to be your exception, but I won't let you make me your excuse." The response was thunderous. Downloads doubled. Support surged. Victor's legal team scrambled. Monroe stock wavered. And then something unexpected happened. An anonymous source inside Monroe leaked surveillance footage. Raw, time-stamped video from the boardroom hallway. It showed Nia resisting security, declaring she could help, speaking Arabic fluently to the delegation. It also showed Victor Langston saying clearly, "Let her try. If she fails, we're finished anyway." No manipulation, no staging, just truth. The video trended within hours. Hashtag clarity not control. Hashtag let her try. Hashtag they knew. And while public support grew, Nia's inner circle prepared for the next inevitable blow. "Someone leaked that video," Oliver said quietly, "but they didn't send to us directly." "Which means," Grace asked, "they're playing a deeper game." That evening, after everyone had gone home, Elliot sat alone at the Foundation desk. An alert flashed on his secure tablet. Message received, sender unknown. He opened it. Inside was a single sentence. "She doesn't know who helped her yet, but the board does, and he's still in the building." Attached was a still image from Monroe's server room. The man in the frame? Sophia Monroe. The Unmuted podcast launched on a rainy Thursday morning. No grand press release. No viral countdown. Just a single upload and a quiet message on the Clarity website. We're done asking for permission. This is our story now. Episode 1 was Nia's voice again, steady, unflinching. But this time, she didn't just recount her own story. She guided the listener behind the curtain. This isn't just about me, she said. It's about who they silence and why. She spoke about her training at the Aninsli Foundation, the threats, the footage, the shifting public narratives. And she ended with a promise. We're not unmuting for applause. We're unmuting so others don't disappear. Within 12 hours, the episode had over 200,000 downloads. By the end of the week, it had cracked 1 million. The second episode featured Nia interviewing Nia, not herself, but the woman who once worked inside the very think tank responsible for designing the narrative realignment protocol used to discredit her. Nia, the former insider, spoke under a pseudonym and with her voice digitally altered. They taught us how to bury truth beneath complexity, she said. Our job wasn't to lie. It was to confuse, delay, reframe. Why are you here now? Nia asked. Because they started coming for children, the woman said. And because you didn't flinch. The impact was immediate. Whistleblowers from across industries began sending in tips. Teachers, medical staff, transportation workers, even retired journalists. Grace expanded the team's intake system. Oliver doubled the cybersecurity protocols. Andre reviewed each submission with eyes trained to spot forgeries. And Nia? She became the voice they trusted. She wasn't just hosting. She was listening, moderating, connecting. It was episode 7 that broke the ground beneath them. A retired Monroe board member, who had quietly resigned after the Dubai deal, agreed to speak publicly. I should have said something, he admitted. But I thought silence was neutral. What changed? Nia asked. She reminded me of my daughter, he said, and I realized I was protecting a company more than I was protecting the future. He cried during the interview, and so did half the audience. That episode triggered a tidal wave. A U.S. senator cited it during a televised hearing on corporate lobbying. 3 universities announced reviews of their media ethics curriculum. A major school district in California reinstated curriculum previously removed under political pressure. But amid the noise, a shadow returned. Nolan Fisk. Nia had heard of him before, first as a name whispered during Clarity's early research, then in Andre's timeline of narrative engineers. Now he was back, not in secret, not hiding. He had launched a new open platform for fact-centered storytelling. It was called Vera. Sleek, modern, allegedly bipartisan. But a leak from Oliver exposed its funding trail. Right back to firm's name in the blueprint, Clarity's master map of disinformation networks. They're building a shadow version of us, Andre said. Not just that, Grace added. They're trying to steal the idea of truth. Nia read through the Vera platform late into the night. At first glance, it looked legitimate. Debates, editorials, neutral framing. But something about it felt hollow. Curated silence in clean font. The team debated what to do. Do we call them out directly? Oliver asked. No, Elliot said. We shine brighter. Let them sit in the shadow they created. So Nia proposed something different. Truth Labs. A live town hall format moderated by her. Unscripted, uncomfortable, raw. No suits. No rehearsed monologues. Just ordinary people speaking the truths they were once punished for telling. The first Truth Lab was held in a small theater in Brooklyn. A retired nurse spoke about being fired after reporting fraud in a hospital billing system. A teacher read from blacklisted books she'd hidden in her basement. A high school student revealed how his essays about racial inequality were flagged as divisive. Nia didn't dominate the mic. She passed it. She guided, listened, redirected. At the end of the night, a woman in the front row stood up and said, "This is the first time I've seen my story treated like a fact." 3 weeks later, they held a Truth Lab in Atlanta. It was packed. Halfway through the session, as a former warehouse worker described being blacklisted after whistleblowing, Nia noticed a figure in the back row. Expensive suit, nighttime sunglasses, Smirk. Nolan Fisk. He said nothing, just watched. After the event, as people mingled, he approached her. "You've made quite the name for yourself," he said. "I didn't make the name," Nia replied. "You just tried to erase it." He smiled thinly. "You know this doesn't end the way you think." "I'm not thinking about the end," she said. "I'm thinking about the people watching." Fisk leaned closer. "They'll never let you win." Nia looked him straight in the eye. "Then they'll have to watch me fight." Back in New York, Elliot debriefed the team. "He's rattled," he said, which means the network behind him is rattled too. "They tried silence, smears, and counter-narratives," Andre added. "None of it stuck." Grace flipped through new files. "So they're trying something else now." "What?" Nia asked. "Erasure through fatigue," Grace said. "They'll flood the conversation, overstimulate, overcomplicate, make truth seem exhausting. Then we simplify," Nia said. "We make it human again." That week, Nia proposed a long-term vision, the William Trust, a foundation inside a foundation. Focus on truth-telling infrastructure, grants for youth reporters, scholarships for students in marginalized communities, training programs in narrative ethics for teachers and community leaders. "It's not just about fighting them," she said. "It's about planting something bigger than them." The Aninslee board approved it unanimously. Anonymous donations poured in, one from a retired CEO, another from a school librarian network. The trust was growing before it even had a website. But just as they found momentum, the darkness struck again. One night, while Nia and her mother walked home from dinner, a black SUV slowed beside them. The window rolled down. A man inside, face shadowed, smirked and said, "Careful what doors you open. Not all of them close again." Then the car sped off. Lina grabbed Nia's hand tightly. "Are you okay?" Nia nodded, but her grip trembled. 2 nights later, a package arrived at the foundation. No return address. Inside, a flash drive and a single typed sentence. "You wanted proof? Here's the fixer in his own voice." They played the audio. It was Nolan Fisk, boasting, laughing, describing how he orchestrated smear campaigns, bragging about silencing journalists, admitting to paying influencers to defame whistleblowers. Then his voice said, "The girl, just a brand in sneakers. We'll drown her in spin and call it strategy." Nia listened, calm. Then she turned to the team and said, "We make this public. All of it." The audio clip detonated across the internet like a long-suppressed truth. Nolan Fisk's voice, caught describing smear operations and boasting of silencing dissenters, played on airwaves, podcasts, morning news shows. Even late-night hosts replayed the most damning line, "We'll drown her in spin and call it strategy." For once, the spin masters were caught mid-spin. Fisk issued a denial within hours, but it landed with all the sincerity of wet cardboard. His statement, edited, taken out of context, malicious fabrication, was immediately debunked when the Foundation released a full recording. And in the silence that followed, something extraordinary happened. People began asking deeper questions. Who paid him? How long had this machine been operating? And who else had it buried? Elliot stood at the Foundation central table, a folder in his hand, spine slightly bowed from exhaustion, but eyes gleaming. "This is it," he said. "The master file, the full architecture." They called it the blueprint. Inside were the mechanics of narrative control, communications between PR firms, shell think tanks, and black budget influence agencies, leaked memos, funnel diagrams showing how public attention could be rerouted from injustice to clickbait with 3 headlines and a celebrity tweet. "These people don't just shape perception," Andre explained. "They shape public memory. They decide what becomes history." Grace sifted through case studies. They buried whistleblowers, redacted school curriculums, censored community archives. Some of this goes back 20 years. Nia stood at the edge of the table, her jaw clenched. She reached for the file, flipped through the contents, and said, "We show the world." Elliot nodded. "Then we show them everything." Clarity released a 3-part special report titled The Blueprint. Episode 1, The Architecture of Silence. Episode 2, Voices They Buried. Episode 3, The Cost of Control. Nia co-narrated with Andre. Grace conducted interviews with survivors, teachers, union reps, a journalist who lost his job after refusing to kill a corruption piece. The final episode ended with a single sentence. What they erased, we remember. The effect was seismic. Several corporations named in the blueprint were subpoenaed. A coalition of international watchdog organizations launched formal investigations. 3 media personalities resigned within 48 hours. 1 senator called for emergency hearings on digital ethics and corporate manipulation. And amid the chaos, Monroe Holdings issued a press release. They were severing all historical ties with Nolan Fisk and appointing a new CEO. Her name? Victoria Giles. Nia sat in the Foundation's kitchen, sipping tea with her mother beside her. Lionel's voice was soft but direct. "Do you trust her?" "I don't know yet," Nia replied, "but I trust the system we built to hold her accountable." Across the table, Elliot slid over a sealed envelope. "What's this?" Nia asked. "An invitation," he said. "The House Committee on Ethics and Technology wants you to testify." Nia froze. "In front of Congress?" "It's a closed-door session," Andre said. "For now, but it's the first step." Nia stared at the envelope. "It's not about them hearing me," she said. "It's about them knowing I won't stop speaking." 3 days later, she sat in a marble-paneled conference room beneath the Capitol. No cameras, no flashbulbs, just a semicircle of stern, suited adults and a girl in a navy sweater, her notebook in her lap. Senator Maria Lell, the committee chair, adjusted her glasses. "Miss Monroe, thank you for being here." "Thank you for listening," Nia replied. She answered their questions clearly. About the Dubai meeting, about the smear campaign, about clarity and unmuted, and the blueprint. And then came the moment Nia knew would define the session. A senator from Utah asked, "When did you first realize you were being targeted?" Nia looked up, calm. "When they tried to make me feel ashamed of being useful." A ripple moved through the room. Senator Lell leaned in. "And what would you say is the biggest threat?" "Silence," Nia said. "Not just the silence we choose, but the silence we get used to." After the hearing, Grace ushered her quickly through a side door. No press, no quotes, but word still got out. Within hours, the story trended again. Hashtag Nia testifies. Hashtag truth has no aid. Hashtag blueprint revealed. Back at the Foundation, a new message awaited. Unmarked envelope, plain white. Inside, a flash drive and a note. "You were right to speak. They'll come for me next." They ran the files through a secure channel. It contained internal communications from a private contractor, audio, memos, payment records. Voices brag about redirecting media stories, suppressing whistleblower leaks, and planting influencers online. And one voice stood out. Nolan Fisk. He was recorded giving instructions to a cleaning crew. Delete the girl's story from search engines. Flood with alternate content. Focus on vulnerability. Maybe question her mother's credentials again. Target the network's funders. Fear is useful. The message ended. Andre leaned back. "We've got him. Really got him." Oliver cracked his knuckles. "Let's publish." Unmuted dropped episode 10. The Fixer. They played Fisk's words. Tracked payments. Named partners. The response was explosive. News anchors played the episode live. 3 of Fisk's former clients launched internal audits. A top executive resigned. But more than headlines, something deeper happened. The public saw the machine, and they saw Nia had dismantled it with a flashlight and a notebook. Later that evening, Nia walked through her neighborhood, hoodie pulled tight against the wind. Kids playing on stoops waved at her. A teenager jogged past, nodding in recognition. A woman held her baby closer when she passed and whispered, "Thank you." Nia didn't respond with words. She just nodded, let the silence carry what words couldn't. That night, Elliot called a team meeting. He looked tired, but there was a fire behind his voice. "They're weakening. Their tools don't work the way they used to. But they're still trying," Grace added, "and they'll regroup." Nia nodded. Then we stay ahead. What do you suggest? Oliver asked. She walked a whiteboard, wrote 2 words. The line. What's that? Andre asked. A summit, she said. Not just clarity. Not just unmuted. A reckoning. We draw a line between truth and agenda, between silence and complicity. And we ask everyone, where do you stand? They all stared. Then Elliot smiled. We start planning tomorrow. Hours later, a courier arrived at the Foundation's front desk. He left a sleek black envelope addressed to Miss Monroe. Inside, a single handwritten message. Nice summit idea. But remember, lines can be redrawn. If you think you've ended this, you're still too young to know the game. V. Nia stared at the signature. It wasn't Fisk. It was Victor Langston. The morning of the summit dawned under a sky streaked with bronze and ash-gray clouds. It had rained the night before, and the streets of New York still glistened as though the city itself had been scrubbed clean for something historic. Inside the East River Civic Hall, dozens of staffers moved like quiet clockwork. Banners were raised, chairs aligned, microphones tested. At the center of it all stood a girl in a navy blue blazer, adjusting her notes with a steadiness far beyond her years. Nia Monroe, a child, a prodigy, a threat, a symbol, and today, a voice the world couldn't ignore. The line was more than a summit. It was a manifesto in motion. Panels featured educators who'd been silenced for teaching uncomfortable truths, journalists blacklisted for refusing to soften stories, technologists who exposed AI-driven media manipulation. A rotating town hall, the Truth Lab, took place in the central atrium. There were no scripts, no political handshakes, just people, raw, open, human. One teacher, fired for refusing to teach sanitized history, wept as she recited the lesson plan that got her removed. A nurse shared how a pharmaceutical company blackballed her after she exposed price fixing in an internal memo. A high school senior from Ohio revealed his school blocked his article on local racial profiling. He had printed it on flyers and passed it out anyway. The room stood each time. No applause, just silence. And then someone new took the mic. In a private hallway lined with portraits of past civil rights leaders, Nia stood with Elliot. He wore a clean suit, his cane polished like a staff of ceremony. Everything in this room exists because you didn't stay quiet, he said. I didn't think it would ever get this far, Nia murmured. It hasn't, Elliot replied. It's just begun. Back in the summit chamber, the final panel began. The map we make. A solo session. A spotlight hit the stage. Nia walked out slowly, her notebook in hand. No script, just truth. She looked out over the packed hall. Delegates from 30 states, 7 countries. Education board reps, human rights lawyers, journalists, teachers, students, parents. She spoke. I used to think stories were just things we told. But now I know they're the things that tell us who we are. She paused. Some people tried to change my story, reframe it, bury it, redefine it. They said I was too young to understand, too coached to believe, too loud to trust. Her eyes swept the room. But I didn't speak because I was brave. I spoke because no one else would. She flipped her notebook open and read a single line she had written the night before. The problem is never the story. It's who gets to tell it. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Nia closed her notebook and looked straight into the live stream camera. They drew their line long before I spoke. A line that said who mattered and who didn't. But today we draw ours. And I ask all of you now. She stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Where do you stand? The room rose. This time not in silence, but in sound. Applause, long and thunderous. And behind it, the rustle of something deeper, a reckoning. Later that evening, as the summit closed, an elderly woman approached Nia in the hallway. She wore a floral scarf and walked with a cane of her own. I used to be a teacher, she said. I quit when they told me I couldn't teach about redlining or internment camps. I thought no one cared anymore. Nia reached out and gently held her hand. I think people care, she said softly. They just need to be reminded where their voice lives. That night, Nia stood on the rooftop of the Aninsli Foundation. The city stretched out before her, glittering and strange. The Hudson murmured in the distance like a forgotten poem. Lionel stood beside her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Do you think it worked?" her mother asked. Nia didn't answer right away. She looked up at the stars. "I think it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be heard." Back inside, Elliot convened the team in the main hall. He held a final file, one that had just arrived from a trusted source in a neutral oversight agency. It was titled, "The Vera Initiative, Phase 2. Inside, blueprints for a campaign designed to reclaim narrative control under a guise of bipartisan fact coordination." Behind it, Victor Langston, the former CEO of Monroe Holdings. "What does he want now?" Grace asked. "To rebuild the system under a new name," Andre said. "Cleaner, softer, just as dangerous." Elliot placed the file down. "He's betting the world is tired, that we spoke too soon, too loud, too fast." "Then we speak again," Nia said. "Louder." They created a new branch of the William Trust, one focused entirely on narrative resilience. Community-run truth labs, curriculum reform kits, storytelling fellowships, and a growing online hub to counter digital misinformation at its roots. Their new motto, "Truth doesn't need volume. It needs velocity." The following month, Nia returned to Monroe Holdings building for the first time since the Dubai deal. It looked the same. Cold lobby, gleaming marble, security desk humming. She didn't flinch. Victoria Giles, the new CEO, greeted her personally. "You changed this place," she said. "No," Nia replied. "This place changed because people stopped letting it lie to them." They walked into the boardroom together. No photos, no statements, just acknowledgement. And then Nia left. The very next day, while walking home from school, Nia found a chalk message written on the sidewalk outside her building. "We see you, Nia. We hear you now. And we won't go quiet again." She smiled, tucked her notebook on her arm, and walked upstairs. That night, she stared at her bedroom mirror, where she had taped a message months ago. "You reminded me that my voice matters." She whispered to herself. "I still believe that." 2 weeks later, an encrypted message arrived at the foundation. Untraceable origin. No return. It contained an audio file and a single cryptic line. The girl's voice wasn't the first they tried to silence, but it may be the last they get away with. They pressed play. It was a recording. A woman's voice, young, urgent, terrified, begging to be heard. She said her name was Layla Monroe. Nia froze. Her fingers trembled. Layla Monroe had been a brilliant linguistics researcher, presumed dead after a whistleblower scandal 10 years earlier. "Who is she?" Nia whispered. Elliot's voice was low. "Your aunt." The room fell silent, because the story they thought had ended had just opened a new chapter.